Many years ago, after creating the Ford Model T and changing the way that business was done around the world, Henry Ford was asked, should you not have listened a little bit more to your customers, been a little bit more responsive to your needs? His answer was very funny. He said, if I'd listened to what people wanted, they would have replied a faster horse. Many years later, in a completely different part of the world, a council in the northeast of England was tasked with making students quieter as they made their way home from a pub in the wee hours of the morning. In response to neighbours' demands, they said it was disrupting their sleep patterns, their way of life. But what are you supposed to do? You can't ban them from going to the pub and you can't put police all along the route. Their answer? A little moment of genius was to give all the students free lollipops to suck as they left the pub. The act of sucking the lollipop made them A, very content, but much more importantly, very quiet. What have both those examples got in common? They're both demonstrations of innovative thinking. That is the ability to see not the way something is, but the way that it might be. Of seeing the potential of something and not the reality. That's what we see. That's what we hear. But what exists underneath the surface there? What exactly is it to innovate? What does it take? What does it require? And how can we create that in our own organisations? In order to understand that, I think the best way is to ask ourselves, what do innovative thinkers do? What qualities do they have? And how can we start to recreate those? So let's start by taking someone like Alexander Graham Bell, the man who created the telephone in 1876. You would have thought that this man would be on a pedestal. But what was Western Union's first opinion of the telephone? This device is inherently of no value to us. Oh, and this was not a lone opinion, by the way. The thoughts of Sir William Preece, Chief Engineer of Britain's General Post Office, were, the Americans have need of a telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys. Similarly, when Thomas Edison, by the way, arguably the creator of the 20th century, was creating the electric light bulb, he was known to have failed several times. And a journalist said to him at one point, gee, Mr. Edison, are you not disheartened that you failed 10,000 times? To which he replied, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that do not work. Bringing that up to date a little bit, Dyson, the man who created the bagless vacuum cleaner, was rejected by every single major manufacturer. His response was to go his own way. He invested in 5,127 prototypes before finally creating the patent that would go on to create an entirely new market. There are now 23 brands of bagless vacuum cleaner on the market, a market that Dyson has 40% of. Why? Because he was prepared to fail. What is the link between playing poker and innovating? It is the taking of calculated risk. It is the preparedness to fail in the short term in order to succeed in the long term. It is the ability to understand that not everything that is going to be great one day makes sense now. And whilst we think about Henry Ford and that brilliant council, who knows how many ideas they had before they had the one. There's much more to successful innovation than just taking calculated risks. What I mean by that is, let's say you've got someone who's tied up and you untie them and you ask them to play the violin. Well, they won't be able to do that unless they have the necessary skills. And there are definitely skills associated with being creative and creating new ideas, seeing beyond and understanding potential. But now let's just imagine for a moment that you've got a violinist tied up and you untie them, release them and allow them to play the violin. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, how many violinists are we tying up in our organisation?